Hey guys, how's it going? So today I want to talk about atheism versus agnosticism and why I am an atheist and not an agnostic, and why I feel that agnosticism is a position that I personally can't justify. And when I say that, I don't mean that I certainly don't judge agnostics at all. I'm not passing judgment on agnostics. Just in my own way of thinking, I can't justify agnosticism. And I wanted to articulate why, because I think it would be an interesting exercise for me and perhaps stir some interesting discussion. And obviously, I don't mean to step on the toes of any agnostics. And I also am not here to debate the existence or non-existence of God. That can be a whole other video, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm just here to talk about why I am an atheist and not an agnostic. So, to start with defining the terms of atheist and agnostic, I think you probably don't need me to go through a technical definition, but the way that I see my own atheism is that in my own lived experience in this world, I have not seen any data to suggest that there is a supernatural deity of any sort. This doesn't mean that I'm not open to transcendent experiences or that I don't believe in anything. I'm not a nihilist, but I see transcendent experiences that you gain through through music or seeing a great landscape or something. And I see the motive for being kind to other people and generally being a nice person as psychological phenomena and not evidence that there's a supernatural deity. They're psychological, which is a indirect way of saying that they're physical, because everything that's psychological is neurological, and that sort of also opens the can of worms of the existence of some sort of a soul, which is something that I also don't believe in. But again, it is a whole other video. And so that's my version of atheism. It's just, in my experience, I have not seen evidence of a god. Agnosticism, on the other hand, as I understand it, is someone who is when someone takes the position that they can't come to any conclusion about the existence or non-existence of God. They tend to say that ultimately they just can't say either way for sure whether or not God exists. And I kind of see the why someone would want to take that position, because it is on the surface of it is probably sounds more open-minded than atheism, because you're sort of leaving open the possibility of being convinced either way, and that's a good place to be. It's a good place to be, open-minded, obviously. But the way that I tend to challenge agnostics is I tend to ask them whether they would take that same position on the existence of ghosts or whether or not aliens have visited Earth. Are you going to say, well, I can't say either way about either of those things? And if there's someone who does believe in ghosts or that aliens have visited Earth, then I'll probably suppress an internal groan. But then I'll say, if some stranger approached you and said that there's this invisible man walking through your house all day, every day, but never talks, never touches you, never touches anything in your house, never makes his presence known, but he's there, would you say, well, obviously that's unprovable, so I can't say either way, so I guess he may or may not be there? No, I don't think you would. I think you would just dismiss that assertion, and you would probably throw that person out of your house, because they would have probably creeped you out by that point. But, yeah, so and that's my fundamental problem with agnosticism, is why do we make this epistemological exception for this one concept of God that we don't make for, like, a cosmic flying turtle or the Loch Ness Monster? I personally look at the existence of God as I think about it in a similar way to how I would think about any scientific hypothesis. And when I say this, I know I'm sounding very reminiscent of Richard Dawkins in The New Atheists. Richard Dawkins, I know in the God Delusion, talks about the God hypothesis and such. And I will just say that I do not identify with the New Atheist contingent of atheists. That again is a whole other video, so I won't go into it. But anyway, saying on the side that I do not identify with that sect of atheism, if it's a sect. But anyway, I do look at God. I think about God in a way that I would think about any scientific hypothesis. And science doesn't prove anything. All insights in science are provisional. So when you put forth a hypothesis in a scientific hypothesis, you look for data that will support or refute it, usually in the form of an experiment, but also you can do like correlational studies or whatever. But you look for data to support or refute a hypothesis. And if the data support that hypothesis, then that gives you reason to think that that hypothesis is useful in helping to explain and predict phenomena in our universe. And so you would propose that it's a good hypothesis and one that has yet to be refuted. And if you gain enough data to support it, then it sort of becomes a theory. And then if that theory continues to basically only gather more and more data in its favor, then eventually it can sort of take on life as a fact. Like the theory of evolution, for example, would be a theory that has sort of taken on the qualities of a fact just because, in theory, it could any day of the week be disproven by a counter piece of evidence, but like that's very unlikely to happen. And there is just so much data supporting the theory of evolution that most people just take it for granted. But still, in theory, it could be disproven. But if your data don't support the hypothesis, then usually you discard it. And so when I say that my own lived experience has not provided any data suggesting to me that there is a God, that's what I'm saying. There is just no data to suggest that this hypothesis, the God hypothesis, to quote Richard Dawkins, is a useful way to explain the universe or make predictions about the universe. And I will add, too, that the implied caveat in that is that, yes, if I were presented with data suggesting to me that there is a God, then I would change my mind. I'm just saying that with the data I have now, I would say that there is not a God. And so I have the same perspective on God as I would have on the Loch Ness Monster, right? I don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster because I've never seen video footage of a creature that looks like a plesiosaurus swimming in the loch that is called Loch Ness in Scotland. But if I did, if I saw video footage or if I went to Loch Ness and saw the Loch Ness Monster, then I would change my mind. And that's just that's my perspective on God. And so I've heard certain people, Jason, I'm looking at you, say that agnosticism and theism being believing in a deity, are the only two intellectually tenable positions about God, because God is a concept that you can't ever be certain about, because theism and agnosticism aren't about certainty. Theists, believers, only have faith that there is a God. They don't say that yes, God exists. They just have faith. Whereas agnostics sort of take a similar position where they say, well, may or may not exist. But atheism, according to this perspective, is the least sort of epistemologically sound position because it claims to have certainty. And I would respond to that with the fact that by saying I'm an atheist, I'm not saying I have certainty. I'm not saying that I know for a fact God doesn't exist. I'm just saying that with the data I have no reason to think that a God exists. Anyway, that's just perhaps I'm idiosyncratic among atheists in that perspective. I don't know. But, I do like to say that I won't believe in God until he walks up to me and shakes my hand, but I know that that's kind of a dumb... that's an oversimplification, and I know it's mostly a joke. But anyway, so yeah, that's all. That's my perspective on atheism and agnosticism. I would love to hear from agnostics out there who want to argue with me, and any believers who want to argue with me as well, yeah, let's have a conversation in the comments. Let me know about your guys' perspective on this. Why, if you're an atheist, why are you an atheist? If you're agnostic, why are you an agnostic? If you are a believer, what do you base your faith on evidence? That's what I'd sort of be interested to know from the believers out there. So anyway, that's all. I will let you go now, and I hope you have a nice weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.